Hello, you guys. Welcome back. I want to give a little bit of a shout out in this late December day to Suzette at Zazu Salon. Thank you for the blowout today, girl. I really, really appreciate you. So I could look kind of like a human for this podcast episode. It is currently middle of December and it is so cold. My nipples are literally falling off because they are just so fucking hard. And it is just very bitter and very cold. But because it's December, typically what I do in December as a business owner with content specifically is I do a lot of what we call transparency content. It's like behind the scenes, my story, just because I basically have sold my dick off for the last 2 months. And interestingly enough, I posted a post yesterday that signed us a pretty large client today. And I'm not going to be sharing it because I think it's going to get you to be my client. I'm actually going to talk about it because when I wrote it, I was like, this needs to be talked about a little bit more. And transparently, about this transparency piece of content, transparently, for me, when I think about business, one of the biggest conversations I'm having a lot of the time with women, even though we talk about marketing and sales and everything else, it's literally just like this, I don't even know if I would call it like imposter syndrome, but this very heavy, very overwhelming feeling that we're not enough, or someone else is more successful than us, or someone else has it easier than us. And I was thinking, because today was a really exciting day, I'm starting to feel really good about the direction of the business for 2026. A couple things are in motion right now that feel really good. We just announced our big event next year. There's a lot of good stuff happening right now. I'm feeling today really, really on cloud nine. But there's also been probably 15 instances throughout the year where I have felt like someone else is just crushing it more than me, someone who started their business maybe after me or the same timeline as me, is having better experiences than me or making bigger months or just all this crap. And I was having a conversation with a client who's like, yeah, Ashley, you really had massive success in your business so early, which I did. I had my first month was $13,000. Some people, it takes them 2 or 3 years to get to 10K months. We've never done under 10K. So it's very interesting to now look at the business and be like, okay, how did we have so much success? How did we have so much, momentum so early on? And the reason that I loved this post that I created, which the specific tagline, I know you guys can't see it, it says, I bought 2 homes by the time I was 27 years old. Of course, my signature mastermind is going to be a year-long commitment. And the point that I was making when I wrote that was, when we are thinking about the clients we are bringing on in Buy the Blazer for next year, when we're having conversations, we are not appeasing women by giving them consulting offers or masterminds or anything that's a no-brainer. And I know that a lot of you guys are like, I just want to make my offer a no-brainer. I don't believe in no-brainer offers. What the fuck do you mean a no-brainer offer? A no-brainer offer to me is your ability to make whatever it is feel like a no-brainer, not you design the deliverables, overstuff the offer, or decrease the price point to make it an easy yes. That just means that you're being a pussy ass little bitch. We don't play like that at Buy the Blazer. So I was thinking about how I have really been able to scale something that had early momentum for sure, but also I've always looked at everything in my business very much as a long-term game. And even now in the business, we don't really do things for the next month. Everything we do is for a 6 to 12 month trajectory. So even decisions I'm making now in the business, it's because it is going to pay off in 6 to 12 months, not it's going to pay off this month. And interestingly enough, as I've been doing that, we're having more immediate success than ever before. And it reminded me how much me as a leader and me as a consultant to these women, I have to teach women to look at the entire year, to look at the next 12 months, not just to look at the next 10, 12 days in front of them. And so when I made this post, I was thinking a lot about decisions that I've made in my life and my business, and also just things that have really set me up to be a long-term thinker. Because even in my earliest days of life, I pretty much was always thinking 4 or 5 years ahead. And even as a 10 or 12-year-old, to be thinking about paying for school, to be thinking about, writing my first resume, to be thinking about buying a house. I did a lot of those things very early on. And I think I've always been a very long-term kind of what's next individual. So I thought we were going to talk about a couple of those things today to maybe inspire you to remember that although it's nice to have that shiny win, although it's nice to have that client sign now, when you're running a business, you can't sacrifice the long term for the short term. And a lot of people do. And then they can never experience growth in the long term because they're literally just chomping at whatever is in front of them instead of thinking for their entire vision. And I think that's why we've grown so quickly. And I also think it's why our women in our spaces are making $20,000, $30,000 decisions to work with us and signing for a year-long mastermind with literally no hesitation. Like, that is incredible. So let's kind of talk about a couple of these, shall we? So the first one I want to mention is kind of I don't want to call it a rags to riches story, because I don't want to make some type of indication like I was, poor or something, or I like didn't have money as a kid, but kind of, your zero to hero story or rags to riches story. This has always been mine, so it's very appropriate that we start with this story. But a lot of people know that for me in my life, my very earliest memory, like I'm talking, I cannot remember age 5. I can't remember getting a Barbie. I can't remember hanging with my cousins. Like, I don't really remember anything earlier than 5th grade. And I don't remember exactly what time of year it was, but I remember it was 5th grade because I wasn't even in middle school yet. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, middle school is coming. I'm very nervous about middle school. Middle school is when you're an adult, because when you're in 5th grade, you're in elementary school, and then it's like middle school and high school is like adult chapter of your life, or at least late childhood chapter of your life. But my earliest memory when I was in 5th grade was when I was sitting in my dad's office. He's sitting here. I'm literally sitting here in a little chair. And I'm sitting over by the cabinet because my mom's sitting over in a chair over here. I can remember it perfectly. And my dad pulled out this notebook, and he pulled out from a bin over on the right left-hand side. I can literally remember this so crazily specific. And he went over to this bin, and he's sitting down, and he's like, all right, we need to start talking about working and making money and doing whatever. Again, I was in 5th grade. I was 12 years old, 11 going on 12 or 12. It was around that time. I turned 12 that summer, I think, before 6th grade. So I might have been 11 at this point. But my dad turned around, he went into this bin, and he pulls out a Mizzou brochure. Because if you guys don't know, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. So the big school in Missouri is Mizzou. It's kind of the state school. And my dad went to Indiana, my mom went to Michigan State. So both my parents did the big state schools thing. So it made sense that my dad was Michigan or Mizzou, Mizzou brochure, let's talk about Mizzou. So he pulls out the brochure, and I remember he had this notepad of all these different dates and all these different amounts. And he's like, look at the pricing of Mizzou, which I think at the time, if I remember, it was 30,000, what he wrote down for if he projected of how much it was going to cost. I don't even remember if it was per year or whatever it was. But basically, I'm getting a phone call right now. I wonder if someone wants to talk to me. It's probably a scammer. Apologies for that. But could you imagine if I'm hold up, I'm on a podcast right now? That's too fucking funny. You guys can tell I do not edit and script these videos. These are very much as raw dog as you can fucking get with a podcast. Real? That's okay. We raw dog the podcast, which is why it's so authentic and why you guys can see my fucking brain as I think about this experience and remembering this so vividly, because I do. But my dad pulled out this Mizzou brochure, and he looks around, and he's looking at all these things, and he's like, okay, do you see how expensive this school is? And again, I don't have a concept of money. I was a kid. But he's like, do you see? And he was writing out these numbers. He's like, so if you save this much amount this year and this much amount this year and this much amount this year, by the time that you're in high school, this is how much you're going to have. This is how much school costs. You're going to be behind. And I remember he specifically said the words you're going to be behind, because that really made me uncomfortable. I don't know if it's a Leo thing. I don't know if it's a first child thing. I don't know if it's an Ashley fucking Bennington thing, but I do not want to be behind. I don't want to be behind. I don't want to fail. I don't want to not be successful. I don't want to, be compared to anyone. I didn't like those words. But he was basically articulating to me of, hey, Ashley, if you want to go to college, you really need to start getting ahead of this, because it's going to be a lot of money. And I remember he showed me the total amount. He's like, look, we're looking at 55 or 60K or whatever the amounts were. I don't remember that part of the discussion. And something in me clicked. But at that time when he was going through this, I remember thinking I don't want to not do a good job for my dad. Also, again, I'm not even in middle school yet. We're talking about college, which is about 6 or so years away. And my dad at that point was starting to talk to me about college debt and how bad college debt is. So now we're thinking about what could happen to me as an implication of a 22-year-old. I'm currently 12. So we're now thinking 10 years in advance, which saying that out loud is really wow to think about. 10 years in advance as a middle schooler. And what's interesting about this, thinking about now who I am as a business owner and who I am as a person, something in me sparked where I was all right, if I have time on my side, I can get ahead. I also had this weird thing where I didn't want to be all my stupid friends and have college debt or be poor or whatever. I don't know. I just really wanted to be successful. I was always kind of money motivated. So I started working multiple jobs when I was in 5th grade. Now you might be I don't understand how that works. In 5th grade at my elementary school, I went to an elementary school where the 5th graders were walking buddies to the kindergartners, which basically means that when you are exiting the school, you're supposed to go pick up your kindergarten and walk them to the bus and make sure they get on the bus. And there was a little girl named Mia at the time who I would walk to the bus every single day because we were on the same bus. So like I would walk her. And Mia, when I would like make sure she got off the bus, her mom was like, thank you so much, thank you so much. Her mom started hiring me to babysit. So it wasn't just, a couple hours here, a couple hours there. I'm talking about like 5-6 hours, long days, like evenings. And I remember babysitting Mia, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th, also for so many years. And I even remember one time her mom had to stop by our house for some reason. I don't think she paid me or something. She stopped by and remember she handed me like a $100 bill. Now I need you guys to remember, like I'm like 12 years old. $100 is like $1 million at 12. But the point of me saying this, it's not even about the experience that I had. I got so motivated because every time I would come back from babysitting and I would hand my dad the money and be like, look how much I made. He's like, so you can either like spend this now and enjoy it, or you can be debt-free in college. Like, which one do you choose? And I remember at that time, like starting to discipline myself that if I start to be intentional now, then I can actually be in a position where I don't have to have college debt. And I didn't even really understand what that meant. I just think I liked being motivated by like my dad's approval of me or pride from me because I was working so hard. But you guys, I was working hours and hours and hours. And I think I even put it in here, but I think it was end of 8th grade. My parents and I were looking at my bank account. I think there was about 10K in there, which is like kind of insane. So we're building this fund for college. We're doing all these things. And what's crazy is, a couple years later, I wrote in 2025. That's so fucking funny. I did not mean to put that. In 2025, I graduated debt-free. That's incorrect. In 2015, that's what I meant to write. 2015, when did I graduate college, Lexi? 2015. In 2015, I graduated college debt-free, not 2025. That's fucking embarrassing. This is so funny. You can make $1 million a year and have typos in your content, you guys. But in 2015, I graduated college debt-free. And I remember at that time being like, holy shit, this was not as hard as I thought it was going to be because I had been doing this and setting this aside for 10 years. What also happened when I was graduating college is when I was a senior in high school, I remember my dad started talking to me a lot about the stock market. And at this time, again, a lot of people at age 18 are not investing, but there was a little portion of some of the money that I had that I said, okay, I really want to make sure that I'm like setting this aside because my dad was always talking about money growing and all the things. And my dad and I would sit down in the morning and watch the stock market show. And there was this like really creepy kind of bald guy. And I don't even know if he's still on, but he would like hit the stuff in the morning and be like, this is the stock to buy and whatever. It was like a whole thing. And so it's crazy to think that I think it was around $8,000, if I remember the total amount, $8,000 my senior year. 4 years later was over $20,000. I ended up house hunting for about 4 or 5 months when I graduated college, or after I graduated college, I was house hunting for a couple months, bought a house a couple months out of school. That continued to grow. Plus those couple months, I was saving money from the new job that I had because I had a full-time job. And I ended up buying over a $250,000 house at age 22. Again, both of these things were, I was thinking long-term. I was thinking like invest for the future. And these were pretty young experiences in my life. So obviously these are kind of like anomaly type experiences and kind of like one of a kind experiences. But I need you guys to like think about the fact that when you think about investing a year into your business, when you think about putting 20K into a mastermind, it's like, dude, I was putting 20K away in a bank account at 12. Like, don't be a pussy little bitch. Like, do the shit that is hard. Invest for the long term. Make the big boy decisions. I was, paying a $60K college bill by the time I was 22, and you're going to overthink like an investment in your company, an investment in growing and building something that could be $1 million business. Like, that's why I just don't have a lot of tolerance for people who like don't do the shit that they need to do in order to have the success that they want. Because like, I've been doing this since I was, still chewing my nails down from fucking anxiety, having these conversations with Mark in his office at 12 years old. So anyway, so those are a couple of things I did. Now, as I continued to go into my 20s, there's a specific instance where I really think about a big decision I made to invest in the long term, when probably out of all the experiences I've had was the most scary. But for me, when I graduated college, obviously I was very money hungry, if you can imagine. So I was working a corporate job with Target at the time. And then I took a sales job when I was 24 years old, I believe I was, because it was about 2 years after college, year and a half out of college, somewhere in there. But I took a sales job, the infamous sales job, as we all talk about it. This 3-year period of my life literally changed everything for me. Every single part of my life comes back to this experience. I was in a relationship that I thought was going to be my end forever thing. I, was really starting to think about myself as like an adult. I had a house at this point. Like, I was kind of like, whoa, I'm in the adult world. And then I started the sales job, And I went from making good money. I graduated college making around $60K a year, which is kind of crazy to think about. Thank God that was helpful in buying a house, no debt and $60K income. But also, I worked a lot and I hustled a lot. Well, then when I went to the sales job, I had a base salary that was more than that. On top of the fact, the average person in the office that I started in was making like $300,000 a year. And I'm like, hold up, right? Because again, house wasn't crazy expensive. I had a Lexus, like I had all these like nice things. I had no debt minus the house, I guess, at this point. And I'm like, $300K a year. Like that's like, I've made it in life money. And I was 24 years old being like, can I do that in the next year or two? So as you can imagine, 24, 25, 26, as I started to scale up in this company, I started making really good money. I remember, at 25, I looked down, I was like, I had 100K in the bank. Like I was like, whoa, like some of the stuff that a lot of people don't think about. And there was a lot of, in that time, navigating the like immediate gratification with the long term, because I kind of felt like I had earned the right to like spend a little bit more money, not to the level that I spend now. I was just showing Lexi a fucking $1,600 coat that I bought, freaking, cheetah print or something. Like crazy stuff. I hadn't gotten to that yet, but I was starting to spend money on nice things. I was buying furniture. I was buying nicer clothes. Like I was kind of starting to invest in more short-term things, but I also too really was thinking about my future, because about 2 years into this company, I realized how integrated I was in this sales job. I was obsessed with my boss. I knew everything about his life, his kid's life, his this life, whatever. Like I was so obsessed with like proving to him that I was worthy. My teammates, I was like so competitive with them. And when I was struggling and they were doing really well, like I felt like I was a failure. I had this like regional manager who was a total fucking asshole, who would always make me basically tell me that I wasn't committed enough when I was literally sometimes going home at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, when I got there at 4 a.m. the night, like the day before. Like I just constantly was being told basically I wasn't enough. And I started thinking about my life because, my friends are all at this point starting to obviously have jobs that they cared about. I had friends that were starting to get married. Like I had some of these things happening, and I'm looking around and I'm like, I'm not in a relationship. A guy that I thought I was going to marry, and I just broke up. So like, I was being a little sad sack during that year. I had friends that were moving away and doing fun things there. And like I was in Chesterfield, I guess Baldwin at the time, in this house that I bought. I had made it financially. I had all my friends telling me that I had the luckiest life ever, but yet I felt so fucking empty inside. And I was like, is this what my life is going to be? And I remember a lot of the times during that, I was starting to get validated a lot by my dad, because my dad was very much like a long-term, like he was always long-term thinker, like, oh, whatever. We were talking about checks and how to write a check when I was in 5th grade. I was like talking about resumes when I was younger. Like there was all these things that I was always thinking very long-term on. But I remember thinking like, I don't want to be like my dad, where I sacrifice the long-term so much that my short-term, or I focus so much on the long-term that my short-term is miserable. There has to be a better way. And so in March of 2020, we all remember March of 2020, I was about to go on a vacation with one of my best friends, Lauren, at the time. And we were going to go to, funny enough, Chicago. We had a trip scheduled for Chicago. Wow, we ended up here 5 years later. We were going to visit Chicago for the weekend, and every day leading up, it was shut down here, shut down here, shut down here. And I was so burnt out. I was so looking forward to this vacation. I needed it so bad that when we got the call that Sunday, I will never forget it, because I went into the office that morning and I was not supposed to go into the office. And then I got a call being like, didn't you go in the office today? I was like, no. I did not go into the office on a fucking Sunday yet again. But I got a call from my boss, and he's like, we're not going into work tomorrow. We're going to try to take a couple days to like be virtual while we navigate this COVID thing. Again, we all thought it was gonna be like a week or two. Immediately, I'm like, great break. I need a break so fucking bad. And it was that time where having time to think about what I wanted in life made me realize how miserable I was. And I started thinking like, I don't even really want to be here. So why am I even working this job? Because the money and the pride and the success of being here like doesn't make me happy. And at 27, I made the decision, very reluctantly, but also as it was one of the easiest things I've ever done at the same time. I kind of was conflicted in this. I basically said, I have to make a change because I'm headed in a direction I don't want to do. And at 27 years old, I had everything looking as perfect as possible from the outside. I was happy, I had money, I had a house, whatever. And I said, I'm going to walk away from this job. At the time, by the way, I had been gifted $125,000 of stock, and I had to leave all of it behind. I didn't get a single bit of it. And I was projected that year, because I'd already made that year $250,000 because I got paid out from the last year commission. So I already made $250K. Not take home, because taxes on fucking whatever you would call it, taxes on bonuses and commission are so horrible. So it was significantly less than that, but I just put all this money in the bank, I had done all these things, and I was like, I have to figure something out. At first I thought I was gonna be buying a house, which fun fact I ended up doing. But the second thing is I was like, I have to change my job. And you guys, at 27, when everything looked so perfect, I walked away from that job. I took a job that made significantly less. It basically was just gonna allow me to pay my bills in this house that I had just bought, because I bought a new house. I furnished the house, I did all that. And I remember thinking, like, I think in a couple years, it probably won't be this year, it probably won't be next year, I will be grateful I did this. And to be very transparent, you guys, when I first made that decision, it was May. I believe I quit in May. I started the new job in June. July and August, I'm at Amazon. At a job at Amazon. I have to go into a warehouse at the time, and we're all wearing masks because it's still in the middle of COVID. And I would sit in a hallway all by myself, 9 hours a day, and I would do this onboarding shit, because Amazon is the most disorganized company I've ever worked for in my life. And I sat in a hallway and I would shop for my house. I remember I did it every day. And I'd go home and I would cry. And I would say, I should have just stayed miserable. I should have stayed hating my life. This is literally worse. I'm now poor and I hate my life. Just kidding, I was not poor, but I just felt really financially stretched, because I went from a very affordable house to a really nice house. I was buying all the stuff for the house. I could talk about how much money I spent in a period of 6 weeks. It was insane. I was doing all this stuff and I'm just like, what did I just do? I just fucked myself. And I think some of you guys feel that sometimes when you make a decision in your business and you're like, you lose, the money comes out of your account, or you like, the business doesn't scale yet. And for about 1 year, I cried all the time, being like, what if it wasn't worth it? What if this was the bad decision? Like, what if I should have just stayed making more money but hating my life? And then about a year into that job, I got a promotion, kind of, to go and do a remote job, which got me out of that horrible fucking warehouse in St. Louis. And I started working from home, which gave me a little bit more breathing room, because I could like take a walk during the day. I could like, go and get Starbucks in the morning. I could like take calls. And about a year into that remote job is when I started Her 7-Figure Story, and I started posting on TikTok. And you guys kind of know that story, but 3 or so months into that is when I kind of launched the coaching piece of Her 7-Figure Story. And I was having sales calls and doing all that, and I could do it because I was working from home. And so, to think about, I quit this job at 27 and now I'm, basically 29 going on 30. And, I think it was month 5 going in 6, we had our first $50,000 cash month. I remember thinking, twice this is my year's salary. I just made this in 30 days. And I took sales calls on Saturdays. I took sales calls at night. I told my boss I was sick one day. I took sales calls all Wednesday. I think I made like $10,000 cash that day. And I was like, totally worth taking a sick day. But like, that was 3 years after I had basically, in my opinion, ruined my life. I'd ruined everything I'd worked for. I thought my dad was going to be so angry at me. But that risk, that long-term thinking of like, I want to be the business owner. I want to do something worthwhile. I don't want to be miserable in life. That was all worth it. And then a year later, we did our first 100K month. And, now we have Buy the Blazer, which is like insane what it's become. And I've been able to retire, Lexi from her crazy corporate life. I've been able to provide for, I hate saying my family because, I don't know if I would call Brendan and Winnie my family, but like my family. And, I moved to Chicago and I got to do that because I just wanted to. And I'm able to donate a lot of money to charity, and I'm able to have free time. Like, it's literally a fucking Friday afternoon and I got my hair done, and Lexi and I went and got coffee, and now I'm recording a podcast. Like, because I took that fucking risk, because I literally walked away from something that was so good on paper because I felt like there was something great beyond what I had. And it was very scary. And for a year, I didn't know if I had made the right decision. But now looking back, it makes so much sense. And that was just something where I had to really commit to the long-term vision and sacrifice something that I think in the short term worked, and also provided a lot of financial just comfort to myself at the time. So it's just really interesting to like think about that. And, even in the business, when I think about the decisions I made in the business, when I was right before this 50K month, so I started Her 7-Figure Story. And then a couple months later, I remember I was on a podcast with a really great like marketing expert, and I was on her podcast, and we wrap up and she's like, how'd you feel about it? And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. I'd never done a podcast before. I was her guest. And then she was like, yeah, like my business coach actually mentioned blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, like who's your business coach? And she's like, oh, this girl. And she goes, you should hire her. Like, she'll really help you scale your business. And I was like, okay. And I was just hungry. Again, I was like 4 months into being a business owner. Like, I was doing all one-on-one coaching. I had picked a system that someone else had, and I just kind of like was figuring that out. Like, I didn't really know what I was doing, right? And I remember I messaged this business coach on Instagram. She had the most pink, bubbly, crazy ass Instagram profile. And I was like, whatever. And I messaged her and I was like, hey Demi, I'm at like these 10K months. I don't really know what I'm doing, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, oh my God, you need to be in our mastermind. Here's the link. You should join, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And I remember I'm going through the application and looking at it. Oh my God, I was like, what the fuck? I'm going through this application. I'm like, what's happening? I was like, maybe 4 or 5K. I was prepared to spend a couple $1,000s. I look at this application and I look at the pricing and it's like, do you want to do 15K pay in full or like, I don't even know, 6 months of $3,000 basically. And I'm like, $3,000 a month? Like that's like the price of my mortgage. Like, what, are you kidding? Again, I was at a full-time job. I also knew because I had a pretty rigorous schedule between the coaching clients I had. But I was like, I can't attend a single call. But every part of me was like, I have to be in that room. And so I said, okay. I said, I'll do the payment, the payment plan, which I didn't care. Fine. I did the payment plan for $2,900 a month. It was something like that. It was a lot. Like a lot of the times when people are like, oh, your mastermind is expensive. I'm like, my first investment was more than my mastermind monthly amount. It was so crazy, especially this past year before we increased price points. And so I was like, okay. And I invested $15K in a girl who I'd never talked to, didn't know anything about. And just the energy of that room was so freaking cool. I don't even think she had met me yet or had my kickoff call with me. But all I did was I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And I went into her portal and I was like, all right, I'm making big moves. And I was so excited that afternoon I went on TikTok and I made this really crazy video or whatever. I don't remember. It was like this kind of like quick, 10-second type video. And I went to my friend's house that night and she goes, your phone's blowing up. And I was like, yeah, I am. All of a sudden I see application. I'm like, whoa. 15 applications in. I was like, Marissa, I need to pause real quick. I need to go make another version of my program because I can't have all these people apply for. At the time, what I did on the application is you applied for what dates you wanted. And I had a 6-week coaching program. And so I was like, I need another version. So I went on, I duplicated the calls and I said, okay, we're going to do a second round of the program on this date and this date. And I made all these different versions. And so when people were applying, they could choose what dates they want. And we had over 100 applications in a matter of a couple days. And I said, I have 100 sales calls on my calendar this month. And I remember at that time, I texted my boss. I told her that I wasn't feeling well. I took off a Wednesday. I literally did whatever. I was like, I'm just going to figure it out. And I remember my first month in that mastermind being like, I just had a 50K month. And guys, it wasn't even the mastermind that did it. It was just me choosing myself and choosing longevity and making that decision. And by the way, I did not pull that money from anywhere. I said, if the business is not making that money, then I will go literally sell my soul and figure out a way to make that money. Like I was not going to pull that from my personal money. And instead I pulled that from the business every single month because I was like, the business has to support the business expenses and I'm going to figure this out. And again, that's just an example of choosing the long term and choosing to invest in the big scary things. And obviously I have many more examples of that. I did a private coaching offer a year later with a incredible coach. And I remember her telling me it was going to be $50,000. And I was like, what? Like I just went from $15,000 in 6 months to 50,000. Like that felt like a big ass stretch. And I remember I cried when I submitted that first $6,000 a month payment. Like that was scary. I remember that. There's been big moves in events and things that I've done. Hiring Lexi was really scary because I was like, oh my God, like I can fuck up shit for myself, but I can't fuck up my friend and her success and her livelihood. Like I would literally go bankrupt before I did that. But there's been all these things that have just been really, really scary. And there was a lot of things where most people would not have made the decisions that I made, but also most people don't now get to experience the business that I have. And although there's many things I would do differently, there's times in my life where I look back and say, you know what? I should have quit that sales job. I should have stayed in my tiny house, which it was not tiny. It was beautiful. It was an amazing first house. But if I would have stayed there, I'd probably have an extra $300K in the bank right now. So that, sometimes I think back at that and I'm like, okay, that might have been really nice. But also like maybe then I wouldn't have, done this or that, or maybe I wouldn't have dated that horrible asshole guy when I was 28 or this. And maybe I would have never found Brendan and maybe I would have never moved to Chicago. So like, I can't look back at anything that I've done, good, bad, ugly, and been like, okay, I should go back and change this because every single thing that I've done has led me to this point. And even the horrible moments of my life or the heavy moments or the friendship breakups or the, shit, I'm looking at my bank account and I'm freaking the fuck out right now, or pulling from investments that one month because our business didn't do as well as I thought and I made a really crappy investment in a coach and I paid in full. Like I've done some crazy ass shit. to survive, to thrive, to function, to exist, to move forward. And I have to be grateful for the good, bad, and the ugly because, like, again, it led me here. And I know that those things are going to allow me to continuously scale, but I'm going to make bad investments. I'm going to choose incorrectly. I'm going to overpay on stuff. And I definitely own way too many coats and shoes. So you guys want to shit on me for something. That's an easy low-hanging fruit there. But I'm also very, very proud of what I've done to get here. And even my parents who now know that I run a business, I was talking to my mom the other day and I was mentioning something and she's like, not a lot of people have the courage that you do to do what you've done. I hid my parents from my business for 2 years. I was working a full-time job while also scaling a business, and we did multiple six figures for basically 9 months. Like, I took all my best friends on this all-expensive fucking paid trip that set me back $18,000, which was so fucking stupid. When I was 30, I've shared things about the business with friends that they're really grateful for, and then others, it's blown back in my face. Like, there's been so many things that I could do very differently. But the thing that I just want to leave you guys with is, if you want to be exceptional, if you want to live an exceptional life and have exceptional wealth and exceptional friendships and relationships and opportunities, which I now have, you have to think like someone who is exceptional. Even if you don't know what that is yet, even if you can't fully embody that, you have to go figure out what it looks like to be exceptional. You have to be investing for the long term. You have to be making scary ass, big, heavy decisions. You have to be doing all these things that maybe sometimes don't make sense. Or maybe sometimes you spend 1 year sitting in the halls of a fucking Amazon with a boss who was literally such a bitch, and was so mean to me and made me feel so stupid. And I was like, girl, I make more than you. I used to make more than you, I guess, at the time, in an hour than you're gonna make all fucking year. I hate you. I hated that girl so much, and I hated a lot of my colleagues, and that was just such a horrible experience. And I sat outside and ate lunch and would call my mom and cry every day of that job. I hated it. And for a year, I thought I had made the worst decision of my life. And now I look back and I was like, that was one of the best things I've ever done, even though for 1 year it was so fucking hard. And so, I hope that you take something from this episode. Maybe it's just helpful for you to hear that I have literally cried myself to sleep many, many nights, not knowing if I was fucking up my life or making the best decision ever. But for so many women who want something so grand, you just want a life that is so fucking big, you have to be able to play big, and you have to be able to play the long-term game when most people are going to be afraid of that, because it's much more fun to have the instant gratification that a lot of times we can curate within our business, with clients, personally, professionally, your closet, that DoorDash that night, whatever it is, we just want it right now. And most of my life, I had to choose to not have it right now to be able to have it so much bigger in the long term. And I just want to make sure that I leave that message or that insight or that perspective with you guys today. So I do hope that this episode is helpful and maybe gives you guys some encouragement that I've been there, I've navigated it all, but it's totally fucking worth it when everything that you've worked for eventually comes to fruition. So I hope this is a good episode for you guys. And I love you all so much. I will see you guys next week.